Hello, everyone, and welcome to this. This is the first session that we're doing for the 3 for 30. This will be a 30-minute period in which we go over a couple of different topics, the little primers on the different topics here. And we're going to go ahead and start today with the first one. And we're going to be talking about a couple of different things today. The first one is going to be um, really talking about desired outcomes and why this matters, why it's important when it comes to communication. And everything that we talk about here is going to have some nexus, some connection into communication, because that's what we're all about here. Um, a lot of times when people get a tasking that they need to go off and they need to do something, they need to talk about um, something, whether it's a presentation, they got to lead a meeting, they have to talk to customers, whatever it might be. um, they tend to leapfrog over different steps that are really necessary, and this is where people can get themselves into trouble, but also where they can miss different opportunities as well. And one of the most basic ones when it comes to communication is understanding what your desired outcome is. It sounds simple. It's not that hard to do, and there's a way to go through and do this that I do share. And we'll touch on it here during the 3 for 30, but it's really the guiding light for everything that you do. So, what's a desired outcome? It's the identification and description of what you want to do or what your company needs to do, and that it is used as your touch point for your decisions, for your actions, and also for accountability. And what this does is whenever we're creating a presentation, we're going out to speak to people, we're writing a memo, whatever it might be, that we're looking back at this desired outcome. And there'll be videos on the YouTube channel that'll walk you through how to create a desired outcome statement, because that's the artifact that's really going to become your reference for everything that you do. And there's a process that I walk you through on how to do this. So, a lot of times places and books will tell you, oh, just create this. They don't tell you how to do it. And so that's going to be one of the differences here is you're going to get a step-by-step guide as far as how to walk through and create your own desired outcome statement. And this can be done for you as an individual. It can be done for teams, for organizations. And there'll always be multiple desired outcomes in business. You'll have the primary one for the organization, and then you'll have the one for your team, for individuals. And the idea is that they all mutually support each other. There's a lot more that goes into that. Now, one thing that always comes up is what's the most important outcome? For you as an individual, it's what your desired outcome statement is. For an organization, it's what that outcome is. And like I said, ideally, these are mutually supporting one another. And the value behind this is understanding what you should do and what you shouldn't do, because it can become very distracting to where people will get off a track. They'll get out of scope of what they're doing. Something will happen. There'll be some crisis, some emergency request that's really out of scope for that desired outcome. You got to stay focused on what am I trying to get done. And the most important outcome is what we need as individuals, and then also what we're doing for our organizations. Project outcomes, typically you've got one or two options really. And this is what we do in business is how do we get these tasks, how do we get these projects to be successful? You're either going to be a win, a success, or you're going to be a fail. In 2014, a study was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers and it was across a lot of different organizations. It was thousands of organizations, hundreds of projects. Only about 3% of companies got their projects to be fully successful. There's been some other studies done that 60 to 70% of business projects fail. And then, the other 30%, percent or so that we're talking about, 27%, they're successful enough. They get enough things done to where they have some value, but they're not getting everything done. And of the projects that fail, in that 60 to 70%, more than half of them fail, about 57% fail because of poor communication of one type or another. And this can be everything from how team leads communicate the desired outcome. Is that clear? Do people know what they're doing? What's the instruction? What's the guidance? What's the execution? Replacing staff, people coming in and off of a project, that can be a factor as well. But it's all kinds of different communication factors that contribute to about half of business project failures. So we talk about the different things that we use the desired outcome for. The number one thing is to get to that successful state, because that's why we do work. That's why we get paid, is to deliver that success. And then what needs to happen from that perspective is once a project's over, whether it's a success or a failure, you really need to do that postmortem and go through why did it have the result it didn't. And part of that's going to be the accountability. Now, there's a couple different ways that accountability is used in the context of desired outcome in the work that we do. The first one, and really the one that's most important, the one that each of us has the direct control over, is ourselves. We know what we're supposed to do. We know what we're supposed to deliver. And part of that challenge is overseeing and reflecting on, are we doing what we need to be doing? Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. Now, some people they have the skill, they have the professionalism and the maturity to separate themselves and look back and look down on what they're doing and make that assessment. And when things don't go right, the course correct on their own. One thing that can happen with that, though, is a lot of times people will overdo it. They'll be like too hard on themselves, expecting perfection instead of, a high level of performance, but not perfection, because we never really get there in most things. But how do we hold ourselves accountable? The other option to doing that is working with whoever your leader is. If you're on a team, someone like that, that should be part of their role, is helping your development, which is what accountability is really all about. And when you ask for that kind of feedback, you'll start gaining an idea of, how does your manager, your team lead, your supervisor, how do they see their role in relation to your development? Also, if you are in one of these roles, it's an important thing to do, really, to keep your people on your team, because they're going to grow professionally, but also to be able to grow more talent. Because one thing a good organization does and a good leader does is they want to spin off successful people. A lot of organizations will keep people pigeonholed or keep people in certain slots because it's to their immediate benefit. But it's pretty short-sighted in that people eventually get frustrated. And under what terms do you want people to leave? Do you want them to leave to be proud to have worked for you and spin them off as like someone that does excellent work that you had a hand in crafting, or otherwise? So self-accountability is a big part. We all have a role in that. Your leaders should be able to help you and do this. And there's always the option of finding someone else, a third party, whether it's a mentor who may or may not be in their same organization, or someone like a coach that can provide you that separation, that third party, neutral observation and feedback. Also, what about the people that were involved in the project? How did they perform? And this is really important for both people who are in leadership roles and people who aren't, because once that desired outcome is created, it's been communicated out, it needs to be embraced and adopted by everybody that's working on the project. Now, does that mean everybody has to like it? No, it doesn't. And this is a part of being a professional that's really eroded recently in the American workplace, at least, to where people that feel like, I don't agree with this, I don't like this, so therefore, I'm not going to do it, or I'm not going to give it my best effort. And that can endanger the success of a project. It can increase your failure rates. And so as a leader, you want to hold people accountable, people that contributed, people that made their best good faith effort to make an outcome, to achieve that desired outcome. Also, people that didn't. There needs to be accountability both ways. It's really important that people that did perform, that you recognize and they're compensated in some way for that. It's really important for how we understand performance. People perform because they want to fulfill their motivations, and we'll get into that at the tail end of this session. Also, the people that don't do well, they need to be assessed, and action needs to be taken according to that. When we have that desired outcome statement, when we have those expectations that are set, that makes things a lot easier and hopefully easier to avoid, that people knows what's expected of them. If you're an individual looking at accountability of other people, it can help you shape what you want to do in the future. Do you want to be on teams with certain individuals or not? And you can have kind of your case, like if you want to work with a group of high performers, people that did well, like, listen, this is the group I want to work with. And then if you are shunned on to another team, that's not this decision that you have to make to a certain extent. But you're also guiding your own professional development, your own career. Ideally, these are situations in which everybody's working together and that the accountability is being used for growth on an individual level and also on an organizational level. It all starts with having that desired outcome statement. It all starts with everybody embracing that. When people don't, when people resist, that's another issue that really needs to be taken up as soon as possible. Because you start getting people that are rejecting your desired outcome or not communicating it, they're not sharing it, they're not receiving it, that can become a toxic situation very quickly, which endangers the success of your desired outcome. So let's talk about confidence. Desired outcomes play a huge role when it comes to confidence. And the reason why this is because you know what's going on. It's not a mystery of what needs to be done. A lot of times people will work on stuff and it's not clear on what needs to be done. And the problem comes into that when people don't know what to do, they start making stuff up. And this is one of the biggest problems. And we don't want that to happen, obviously, for a whole lot of different reasons. So that's one issue right there. You don't want that. The other factor that comes into this as well is if they're making stuff up, they don't know what they're doing in reality. And when you don't know what you're doing, that's going to start eroding confidence. For better or for worse, it's just the way it works. So it's really important that that desired outcome is documented, that people know what they're doing, and that they know how to contribute to it when they're going forward. Now, when it comes to communication, one of the biggest mistakes people will make is they'll come up with some kind of communication activity, whether it's a presentation or sending out a memo, whatever it is. And the classic one is, hey, you've got to go do a presentation. People go bust out Outlook or Keynote, Google Slides, whatever it is they're using, and they jump over these steps right off the bat. And the first one is if you're delivering a communication, you're delivering a presentation, and to have a higher level of confidence is, do you know who wants you to do this? Is it something that you're coming up on your own, whether as which the department or group you're in charge of leading, maybe it's your business? Have you been told to do it by somebody else? And the reason why this is important is as you work on your presentation, you need to include that person. Send them drafts, make sure you get clarity on what the desired outcome is for that presentation. And that activity can have its own desired outcome, which needs to be supporting the one above it. So you need to know who is charging you to do that communication. Is it what the desired outcome is they want from that communication? Also, are you talking to the right audience? Are you talking to an audience that can help you realize and achieve that desired outcome? Because when you're not, there's a lot of theories and thoughts on just get out there and talk to everybody. You never know who's in an audience. In most cases, that's bull. You want to be presenting to an audience that can help you realize your desired outcome. Because otherwise, you're not really using your time and other resources very wisely. So you want to try to get to as many audiences or audiences that have the right people in them that can help you achieve that desired outcome. So that's kind of part of the qualifying process. That may or may not be up to you, depending on the situation. Is you may be told to go talk to an audience. Regardless, you have to do what you're told to do. But in an ideal world, you want to figure out how to craft that presentation to that audience to get them to help you achieving that desired outcome. And then the fifth part of that is, are they able to do so? You could talk to a group of individuals that might support your desired outcome, whatever it might be, but then they don't have a budget, they don't have the capabilities, they don't have the people available. So this is kind of another one of those qualification factors. And the other part of this too, with the means, capability, and skills is, can you create and deliver the communication activity? You might be in situations where you don't have the expertise on a topic, where you don't have the know-how on how to create a certain video, or something on the computer, whatever it might be. You might not be an expert in that field. That you need to find someone that can speak and speak credibly in that field. Maybe it's using a certain type of technology, speaking certain languages. There's different factors that can come into once you've identified that you know who's asking you to do this, who's the sponsor, you know what you're trying to achieve, you've got the audience identified one way or the other. You've crafted your message the best possible way to get them to help you achieve your desired outcome. And then it really comes down to, can you deliver the outcome, or can you deliver the message? One thing with communication, and this is with everything, it's practice and execution. Learn all this stuff. It's going to give you an edge. It's going to give you context on how to be a better communicator. But when it gets down to it, you've got to get out there and you've got to practice. And that's going to drive up confidence, no doubt. The more you practice, you get to a level that you're good at, whatever you're trying to do. When it comes to presentations, people are always asking, how many times should I practice before I give a presentation? As a general rule of thumb, I tell people 8 times. The best answer is when you're confident and you're comfortable in your presentation. Ideally, that you can do it without slides or notes, because you never know when something's going to happen. Technology fails, a piece of equipment gets lost or damaged. But when you get to a point that you're comfortable and confident in delivering that presentation, for example, same thing goes true for writing, designing an infographic, whatever it is. You practice enough to where you get confident enough in what you're doing. The more you practice, the more confident you're going to be, and then it's doing it. And one of the tough things can be is when we do something, the execution doesn't go exactly right, which is going to be most of the time. It's picking yourself up off the floor, figuring out what went wrong, practicing, learning what skills you need, what technology and capabilities, and then going back and doing it again. But even the setbacks will help you build confidence. Also, what's the expectation? What's the expectation out of your message? You might be speaking at a conference, for example, and only 5% of the audience are really in that position where they can help you achieve your desired outcome. So the expectation is you're speaking to this larger group, trying to get the attention and the participation of that smaller group. What's the time frame for getting the results from your communication activity? How's it going to be distributed? And understanding like what is expected of you in doing this. That can also help your preparation and your practice. And it's important that when something's done and you're looking back on it, you're reflecting, you're reviewing, you're doing that postmortem, is you've got to match up the expectations, the outcomes in the performance. And that's one of the things you're going to look at to see, okay, what do we do really well? What did we not do so well? How can it be improved? And so expectations are a big part of it. And also, so you don't, maybe have unrealistic expectations on yourself. Good idea to always, work on these also with that sponsor. So let's dive into motivation. There's a lot more to all these topics. And there'll be more content out and videos and other material coming up. Motivations for most people, it's ultimately what drives us to doing something. It tends to fall in one of 3 buckets for people. But at the same time, when it comes to a business context, you're being paid for your outcome. So it's important to keep this kind of separation. They're related but different. You're being paid for outcome. You're being paid for what you deliver. What is playing a role in that is what motivates you to do a good job to make that desired outcome a reality so that you get what you need to achieve to fulfill your motivations. And for most people, I call it the motivation trinity. It's either going to be compensation, taking care of people who are important to you, love, or some form of self fulfillment. And this is pretty much what it comes down to for most people. Um, and most things can be kind of isolated into one of those different buckets for sure. So it's important to recognize this. It's also important to recognize what that activity or what the motivation has to do with the desired outcome. Because most of the time, to get a positive benefit with your motivations, you need to have that desired outcome be successful. Or, if we talk about that 70, 25, 5% split between successful enough, and failures, you want to end up in that top 30%. And a lot of it's going to come down to what happens to get you there. So that ultimately, when your organization, your project's a success, you get those benefits out of it. And then that's going to, propel you to do more when you see those kind of outcomes. Now, one thing that comes into motivations that people can be a little bit uncomfortable with is how much do they advocate what they want. Now, when I say advocate, it doesn't mean you can run up and down the hallway saying like, oh, I need like a pay raise or a bonus on this project to send my kid to college or whatever. No, that's not it. But it is okay to be selfish. It's okay for you to be working for what you need. One of the situations I run into with people is like networking, where people a lot of times are hesitant to share what they're about, what they're good at, what they do. And it's okay to do that because that's going to help advocate and advance what you're trying to do. And that is ultimately to serve someone in some business capacity so that you get the payment, the compensation that you're seeking for, so you can take care of others, feel good about yourself, et cetera, et cetera. Because the reality is, in most cases, other people aren't going to be promoting you to get what you want to do. Someone that's in a mentor or championship role might be, but that's a might. So it's okay to be cognizant of what it is that you want. Doesn't mean you broadcast it all the time. You shouldn't do that necessarily. But it's okay for you to be thinking in terms of, this is why I need this presentation to rock. This is what's at stake. Because you can like not do it and kind of ignore it, and then when things go sideways, it can be a very ugly situation. So this is a very high level run through of 3 parts that are important to communication that aren't even really doing the communication part yet. But they help lay the foundation. Can you create a PowerPoint? Pretty much anybody can create a PowerPoint. How good it is, how effective it is, that's a different question. And what's going to lead into that effective communication is understanding what your desired outcome is, building that confidence up, being able to deal with different situations. One of the areas that's problematic is how AI can create presentations. Yeah, it's a time saver. One of the issues with confidence, though, is when someone doesn't create that presentation, they have a weakness in how they're going to present it, how they're going to answer questions, handle challenges, because they're not familiar with that information. And confidence comes from doing the work. It comes from doing the research, from putting it together, from screwing up. And a lot of that gets short-circuited when we use certain tools such as AI to do stuff, something to think about. And then the third item that we've covered here is having to do with motivation. And it's important to recognize that within ourselves as far as why we are doing something. It doesn't mean you wear it on your shoulder, you go and telling everybody what's going on. But it's important you have it here, you have it here, so that you know what you're doing stuff for. And when things start getting out of alignment, that's where you kind of have to sit back like, okay, this is my motivation, these are my desired outcomes, these are the organizational desired outcomes. Are we still in alignment? I'm still fulfilling this. And that's not just for individuals. It's really important to be cognizant of this as leaders. at least down to the point to where it impacts performance and retention. Are people performing at a level that they're satisfied or more, or not? Because that's going to be impact all kinds of different aspects of your job as a leader, as an owner, director, C-suite executive, whatever it might be. So this is just a very high level fly through these 3 topics. There'll be more information to come out, and this video will also be hosted on the YouTube channel if you'd like to go back and revisit it. And keep an eye out for other information. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. So when we put other information up, you'll get a notification that it's available. And I will see you next time. Also this week, be sure to check. There'll be the next installment in the Think and Grow Rich virtual book club will be coming out. And there'll be some more videos coming out. Puts stuff out most days, Monday to Thursday on the YouTube channel. So if you got any questions, you can hit me up here or on some of the other social media channels on Instagram and TikTok. I'm the Chad Eves. You can reach out to there as well and on LinkedIn. See you next time.